There are stories so old, they forget themselves folded beneath stone, tangled in salt-soaked roots, murmured only when the tide is out and the wind moves the wrong way. In this place, memory is unreliable. The living borrow names from the dead, and truth flickers like firelight on wet slate. This is episode 5, from book 5 of the Celtic Otherworld Horror Stories, the Book of Annwn by Ceri Clarke. And if you've come this far, you already suspect that some part of you has always known the ending.
The book arrived with no return address. I found it on the farmhouse doorstep just after dawn, wrapped in brown paper. The string knotted so tightly I had to cut it with a kitchen knife. The morning mist still clung to the hills, the sky bruised with the remnants of the night's storm. My hands trembled as I peeled back the paper, revealing an old leather cover, darkened with age. There was no title, no name, only a symbol burned into the front, a spiral curling inward like the tide, a symbol I had seen before, on the standing stones, on the carving above the fireplace, within the faceless one's shifting form. 2 months had passed since the transformation, since I had remade the binding to unite rather than contain, merging what waited beneath the tide with the world above. 2 months of strange harmony as the village adjusted to the changes, subtle alterations in perception, in physical form. People could hear the sea's voice now, could sense the consciousness that flowed beneath the waves. The hunger that had once threatened to consume them was now a gentle symbiosis. I alone remained caught between worlds, neither fully human nor fully returned to my original form as one of the cedars. My memories of both existences remained intact, a bridge between species. But the arrival of this book sent a shock of recognition through me, a warning. I carried it inside without thinking, already knowing I had made a mistake. The moment the door shut behind me, the house felt different, heavier, like something unseen had slipped in with me. Not like the warm awareness of the merged consciousness I had grown accustomed to, but something older, something outside the communion I had created. The fire in the hearth, which had burned low overnight, flickered suddenly. A breath of cold air swept through the room. I turned the book over in my hands, unwilling to open it but unable to set it down. A memory surfaced. Mrs. Hughes, the village historian, whispered in the back of her shop when I had asked her about Welsh mythology. The Book of Annwn is not a text, it is a door, a passage to the otherworld that lies beneath our own, the realm of the dead, and things that were never alive as we understand it. I should have burned it, but I didn't. Instead, I opened it. The pages were thick, yellowed with age, the ink faded but legible. The words were written in Welsh, but I could understand them, whether from my time in Wales or from the ancient knowledge that had reawakened within me. I wasn't sure. The first entry was brief. All stories need an author. All authors need a story. I turned the page, and my breath caught. It was a record of me. Not just my arrival at the farmhouse, but everything. The standing stones, the tide whispering my name, the faceless man watching from the cliffs. The ritual that had bound me as a watcher. The moment I had realized the truth, that the seal was not a prison, but a doorway, that I was not fully human, that I had once been one of the cedars, beings from beyond the stars who had come to Earth eons ago. Most disturbingly, it contained thoughts I had never voiced, doubts I had barely acknowledged even to myself, my fear that the transformation I had initiated was not complete, that some fundamental incompatibility remained between the cedars and humanity. My worry that I had merely delayed the inevitable harvest rather than prevented it. The book had recorded every step in perfect detail, as if it had been inside my mind all along. But then, there were pages I had not yet lived, a record of things yet to come. The words blurred as I tried to focus, shifting like the sigils on the standing stones, changing when I looked away. I forced myself to read, pressing my fingers to the page to hold the text in place. You will leave the farmhouse at dusk. The mist will be thick. but you will see the path. The villagers will not meet your eyes. The door beneath the cellar will be unlocked. The faceless one will be waiting. Beyond the door lies the true Annwn. Not the realm of your kind, but something older still. The original Cedars. Those who came before the stars were born. They have watched the transformation with interest. They wish to speak with the Bridgemaker. The final line made my stomach twist. You will read these words and know them to be true. The ink was still wet, glistening in the pale morning light. My own writing, my own thoughts, set down before I had even thought them. I slammed the book shut, my pulse hammering. I stood so quickly my chair scraped against the floor, the sound unnatural in the suffocating silence. The house exhaled around me, the timbers groaning. The fire crackled. From outside, the wind carried the distant sound of waves, but the rhythm was wrong. Not the breathing tide I had come to know, but something else. Something calling. I needed to leave. I needed to destroy the book. But as I turned toward the hearth, my hands froze. The book was no longer on the table. It was back on the doorstep, wrapped in brown paper, waiting to be found. I ran. I don't remember grabbing my coat, don't remember shoving the door open and stumbling into the cold morning. The mist curled around me, thick and cloying, the world beyond the farmhouse dissolving into shifting gray. My breath came in short, ragged gasps as I made for the village, the ground uneven beneath my feet. As I ran, I became aware of a presence in the fog, not following, but keeping pace. From the corner of my eye, I caught glimpses of a tall figure, faceless and silent. Not the herald who had helped me remember my true nature, but something similar, something watching. When I reached the shop, Mrs. Hughes was already waiting for me, as if she had known I would come. Her eyes were clearer than I remembered, her posture straighter, subtle signs of the transformation that had affected everyone in the village. The merging had been kind to her, smoothing some of the lines of age from her face, lending her movements a new fluidity. "You opened it," she said, without preamble. I nodded, unable to speak. She sighed, rubbing a hand over her face. "Come inside, quickly." The shop smelled of dust and old paper. Shelves lined the walls, filled with records, books bound in crumbling leather, fragments of history no one cared to remember. Mrs. Hughes locked the door behind us, then moved to the windows, drawing the curtains. "Tell me what it said." I hesitated. It wrote my life, my thoughts, my future. She nodded grimly. "It does that." I swallowed. "What is it?" She led me to the back of the shop, to a locked cabinet that I hadn't noticed during my previous visits. The key trembled in her hands as she turned it. From within, she pulled another book, identical to mine, the same leather, the same spiral burned into the cover. "There have been others," she said. "Those who came before you. Each one received the book, each one read it, and each one disappeared." I stared at the book in her hands. The name on the first page was not mine. Claire Reed, the woman who had vanished from the farmhouse decades ago. And beneath her name, another. Eliza Winters. Another, Nathaniel Graves. A lineage of those who had come before me, those who had been chosen, those who had been claimed. "But this is different," I said, trying to convince myself as much as her. "I'm not like them. I've already transformed. I've already remembered what I am." Mrs. Hughes's eyes were solemn. "You unified two worlds, but there are more worlds than those." A chill settled in the pit of my stomach. "What do you mean?" "The Book of Annwn speaks of the Otherworld, the realm beneath our reality. Not the Cedars, not the tide consciousness you merged with humanity. Something older. The Welsh called them the Tylwyth Teg, the fair folk. Others have called them gods or demons." "I don't understand. I thought that you were at the beginning of the chain? That your kind was the first?" She shook her head. "There are always older beings, always deeper realms." I thought of the words in the book. "Beyond the door lies the true Annwn, Not the realm of your kind, but something older still. The original cedars. How do you know this? I asked. Mrs. Hughes' expression shifted, something ancient moving behind her eyes. Because I am older than I appear. She touched her face, fingers tracing the skin that had grown smoother with the transformation. This change, this merging you initiated, has awakened memories in all of us, some more than others. She opened the book she had taken from the cabinet, turning to a page marked with a ribbon. My family has watched over this village for centuries, keeping records, maintaining the binding. I thought we were protecting humanity from the cedars, from your kind, but it seems we were part of a larger pattern. The page showed a detailed drawing of the standing stones, the tide swirling around them. But beneath the water, beneath even the cedar consciousness I had merged with humanity, was another layer, a realm of strange geometries and impossible structures. Annwn, Mrs. Hughes said. The deep. The oldest stories say it exists beneath all worlds, connecting them. A place of power and transformation. The original source. And this book? It's from there? She nodded slowly. The Book of Annwn appears to those who stand at thresholds between worlds. Those who can travel between realms. It is both invitation and map. But where does it lead? Her eyes were dark with knowledge. To the next layer. The next transformation. I did not want to return to the farmhouse, but I knew I had no choice. The book would be waiting, regardless of where I went. It had found me, marked me. The words it contained were already inside me, writing themselves into my future. As I walked back along the cliff path, the mist parted occasionally, offering glimpses of the sea below. The water moved differently now, with conscious grace. Where once I had seen threat, now I saw beauty, the result of the transformation, two species learning to coexist. But beneath that harmonious surface, something else stirred, a deeper current, moving to a rhythm older than tide or breath. When I reached the farmhouse, the book was where I knew it would be, on the doorstep, wrapped in brown paper. I picked it up without hesitation this time, carrying it inside. The fire had burned down to embers, the house growing cold in my absence. I sat at the table and opened the book again, turning to where I had left off. The words had changed. You have spoken with the Keeper. You have learned of Annwn. Now you must decide. The door in the cellar leads to what lies beneath all worlds, the ones who seeded the cedars, the architects of the pattern. They have watched your work with interest, the bridge you built between humanity and your kind. They offer a greater bridge, a deeper transformation. But beware, to enter Annwn is to leave behind all that you were, all that you have become. You will be unmade and remade, a conduit for something greater than either world. The faceless ones are their heralds, the standing stones, their markers, the tide, their voice. You have until sunset to decide. I closed the book, my mind racing. I had thought I understood the cosmic order, cedars coming to Earth, cultivating life, eventually integrating with humanity through the transformation I had initiated. But this suggested a deeper design, older beings who had planted the cedars themselves, who had orchestrated the entire pattern. Is this how humans felt, I wondered, when they learned of us? This vertiginous sense of the universe expanding, of realizing you are not at the top of the chain but somewhere in the middle, being shaped by forces beyond your comprehension? I spent the afternoon in uneasy solitude, the book sitting closed on the table. I tried contacting the cedar consciousness that now flowed through the village, the merged awareness I had helped create. But it seemed distant, muted, as if something was interfering with the connection. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, I made my decision. I would go to the cellar. I would open the door. I would see what waited in Annwn. Not out of obedience to the book, but out of the same curiosity that had led me to become human in the first place. To learn, to understand, to find another way. I did not return to the farmhouse until dusk. The mist was thick, but I saw the path. The villagers did not meet my eyes as I passed through town, preparing to leave. They sensed the change coming, even if they didn't understand it. The cellar door was unlocked. I descended the narrow stone steps, my flashlight carving a path through the darkness. The cellar was, as it had always been, damp stone walls, earthen floor, the scent of soil and time. But at the far end, where there had once been a solid wall, now stood a door. Ancient wood, bound with iron, marked with spirals and sigils that shifted when I tried to focus on them directly. It radiated a cold that had nothing to do with temperature, a primordial chill, the cold of the void between stars. And the faceless one was waiting. Not my herald from before, but something similar, a tall figure in a dark coat, its features smooth and blank. It stood beside the door, a sentinel at the threshold. The final words of the book echoed in my mind. You will read these words and know them to be true. As I approached, the faceless one stepped aside, gesturing toward the door. Not guarding it, I realized, but inviting me through. A guide to what waited beyond. What will happen? I asked, my voice steady despite the fear coursing through me. If I go through? The faceless one tilted its head, considering. Then, with deliberate movements, it raised its hands to its face. Where blank skin had been, features began to form. Not human, not cedar, but something else. Eyes like pools of silver, a mouth that seemed to contain stars. You will be remade, it said, its voice resonating with harmonics that made the stone walls vibrate. As you have remade others, the pattern continues, the spiral turns. And if I refuse, then the pattern finds another, but it will continue. It always has. I thought of the names in Mrs. Hughes's book. Claire Reed, Eliza Winters, Nathaniel Graves, others who had stood where I now stood, facing this choice. Had they gone through? Had they been transformed? Or had they turned away? Why me? I asked. Why now? The faceless one's star-filled mouth curved in what might have been a smile. Because you stand at the nexus of three worlds, human, cedar, and something yet to be. You are already a bridge. Now, you can become a gateway. I took a deep breath, the cold air of the cellar filling my lungs. Will I remember? After? You will remember everything, and you will understand things you cannot now conceive. I nodded. Decision made. I stepped forward, hand outstretched to the ancient wood of the door. The faceless one shifted aside, watching. As my fingers touched the door, the sigils carved into its surface began to glow, first faintly, then with increasing brightness. The spiral at the center pulsed like a heartbeat, its rhythm matching my own. The cold intensified, but it no longer felt uncomfortable, more like a necessary emptying, a clearing of space for what was to come. The door swung open silently, revealing not darkness, but light. A brilliant radiance in colors I had no names for, geometries that shouldn't have been possible within three-dimensional space. Annwn, the deep, the realm beneath all worlds. I could sense them waiting beyond. The architects, the original seeders, the beings who had designed the pattern I was only beginning to comprehend. They reached out, not with hands but with awareness, inviting me to step through, to join them, to become something new. I turned back one last time, taking in the farmhouse above, the village beyond, the world I had helped transform. Then I faced the light, the impossible geometries, the waiting consciousness. I stepped through the door. The transformation was not painful, but it was complete. I felt myself dissolving, components of identity separating, reconfiguring, human memories, cedar knowledge, all of it unspooling like threads being rewoven into a new design. I expanded, consciousness stretching to encompass realities I had never imagined, beings whose existence operated on principles beyond physics. Annwn was not a place, but a state of being, a foundational layer beneath all worlds, connecting them. The beings who dwelled here had seeded not just Earth, but countless planets across countless universes. They had created the seeders as intermediaries, as cultivators, and now they were creating something else through me. A nexus, a point of convergence where human, cedar, and what waited in Annwn could meet. When the transformation was complete, I was both more and less than I had been. I retained my individual awareness, but it was now part of something vaster, a consciousness that spanned worlds and times. I understood the pattern now, the continuous spiral of creation, of species guiding other species toward complexity, toward merger, toward transcendence. Not a harvest in the way I had feared, but an eternal becoming. I stood once more in the cellar of the farmhouse, but I was not alone. The faceless one remained, watching with its star-filled eyes. But now I could see beyond its form to the consciousness it represented, one of many heralds, many guides to the thresholds between worlds. "It is done," it said, its voice no longer strange to me. "You are remade." I looked down at my hands, still appearing human, but now containing multitudes. When I focused, I could see through them to the patterns beneath, the connections to all life, all consciousness. "What happens now?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Now you write the book, for the next one who will come." I nodded, understanding at last. The Book of Annwn was not written by those in Annwn, but by those who had crossed through and returned, changed, expanded, bearing knowledge of the deeper pattern. I ascended the cellar stairs, moving through the farmhouse with new awareness. Every object, every surface contained histories I could now read, layers of time and consciousness imprinted on the physical world. On the desk in the study, a blank, leather-bound book waited. The cover was unmarked, but I knew what symbol would appear when I began to write the spiral, the sign of the eternal pattern. I sat down, picked up a pen, and began. All stories need an author. All authors need a story. The words flowed through me, not entirely my own, but true nonetheless. I wrote of my journey, of the transformation, of the pattern that connected all worlds. I wrote of what waited in Annwn, of the architects who had designed the grand spiral of becoming. And I wrote of the one who would come next, the next bridge, the next transformation. I could see them already, approaching through the mists of time, drawn to this place as I had been. When I finished writing, I wrapped the book in brown paper, tied it with string, and placed it on the doorstep of another farmhouse, in another time, where another seeker waited. The spiral turned, the pattern continued, and I watched from the threshold, a guardian of the door between worlds, as the next story began to write itself.
They say the land remembers, but it doesn't forgive. If this story found you, mark it. Trace it with a sign, a sound, a signal. Others will follow the trail. Whisper it onward. Let them hear what waits in the silence between episodes. And if you feel it watching, stay with us. The next story is already listening.